Assalamu alaikum. You're tuned into the Sajdah channel. I'm your host, Sajdah Wendy Muhammad, and we'll be right back. Be a friend, tell a friend, and let's get into it in a few short minutes.
O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided aright, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judgest, and none can judge against Thee, and he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserves to be served besides Thee, and I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who in my judgment is the master historian, taught us that of all our studies, history is the most attractive, and it is best qualified to reward the researcher. History is most attractive. Why should history be most attractive? Because history is the recorded time of the human family in its struggle to overcome obstacles. There is no life that is without struggle. The Holy Quran teaches us that man, meaning man and woman, is made to face difficulties. And after difficulty comes ease. But it is history that guides us through difficulty. For if you know how people who had difficulty yesterday got through, And if your difficulty is somewhat similar, then today we also can get through if we follow the guidance of history. This is why Carter G. Woodson and many of our black giants fought for black people to know our history. Because in not knowing our history, we don't have a guide. And without a guide, we are lost. No wonder the Bible...
Assalamu alaikum, family. Peace be unto you. Welcome, welcome, and super welcome to the Sajdah channel this morning. How's everyone doing? I pray you all are doing well and then some. Let's see, a couple things before we get started today. I'm going to speak today from a chapter in my new book, The Art and Science of Business. It's on a crisis management. And I want to share a little bit about that because what's interesting is because when I was in corporate, they would make crisis management like in an event. I'm putting the website up here 1 second. And it would be like, you know, if there was something explosive that happened, then we go into crisis mode. And I would always think about, I said, you know what? Small businesses, specifically Black businesses, are almost always in crisis mode. Make sure I got that, artandscienceofbusiness.com. And so there's just levels of crises. Our organizations are always in crisis mode. It's just different levels of intensity, different layers, different pieces of it. Those of you who are on Facebook, or if you know anybody that's on Facebook, Facebook is having problems this morning. It says, it's not you, we're having trouble connecting. So if you know somebody that's on Facebook, they may be having a problem. Or if you're on Facebook and you're like, nope, we're good, then just let us know here in the chat. Okay. Before we do that, I want to take a couple of minutes to say a prayer for our brother Hashim Hakeem. Some of you all know and may remember brother Hashim as being on the show. We did a sales masterclass here on the show where he was teaching us about sales techniques and how to sell to Black people. Which is very unique. I remember specifically he said, serve, don't sell, connect, don't sell. Sister Betty said we good on Facebook. All right. So I don't know what they're talking about. Brother Hashim, also, so you may remember him from that. You may remember me talking about how long I've known Brother Hashim. We all came in the mosque around together at mosque number. I was Brother Hashim and some of the other brothers manager on the management team for when they were soldiers at war on the west side. His children are, nieces and nephews. You all may know his son, Golden Child. He does the unity movement. Golden Child's been on the show. You may know his son, Tyree Hakeem. He also is a rapper. Amazingly talented family. So Brother Hashim had a very bad accident and had to have spinal surgery. His sons have been giving updates on Instagram to everyone. And it's interesting because the team's kind of coming back together and we've just been calling each other like, look, let's pray for Brother Hashim. So I want to take a moment to just, in whatever way you pray, let's have a moment of silence and prayer for Brother Hashim's speedy recovery. I pray that Allah heals him from his head to his toes. I pray that in the midst of what is very scary, very frightening, and potentially very tragic, that love and healing comes out of this for himself, for his family. I know Brother Hashim is probably going crazy laying up in that bed because, if you know anything about Brother Hashim, he gonna be somewhere moving, talking, running his mouth. And it's hard to see him like a mighty soldier. And so many of us in the nation, we have soldiered together. And we're like, when I watch these series and movies like on the Ottoman Empire, and I see the people soldiering and fighting together and pushing together, that was us. And we left a lot out there. We made a lot of mistakes. We messed up. But I will say that we have dedicated, and we're still here. And we're still fighting, still pushing, still striving to support, save our people, to aid in the resurrection process. As students and helpers of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, over the years, as you navigate and experience the vicissitudes of life, this thing starts to look different, and you start to look different, and you start to serve differently. You're clearly serve the way you served in your 20s when you're in your 50s. So it starts to look different, starts to change, starts to evolve. Some of you that are on here who have grown older, if you've been blessed to grow in Islam, you know what I mean. As you start to learn more of yourself and start to lock into your niche and start to find out how you can give in better ways. Sometimes people go through stuff. And I say to all the children, I say all of our children because they're my nieces and nephews. Through all of what we went through, all the challenges, we laid them at the doorstep of the Christ. And so we're grateful. Every time I see them, I think about when I see Kadir and Tyree, and I saw Khalida, she came to the play. There's just so many different, Sister Medina. And I just remember them just running around us while we trying to figure this thing out. And then I see them now as adults. I'm sorry if I didn't name everybody. Don't y'all get mad at me and say, Auntie, you didn't say me, but so many of y'all. And when I see y'all now coming to the play and coming to the Sajdah house and supporting y'all's auntie, it just warms my heart, because I remember y'all when y'all was running around while we had to sit y'all on the side while we had drill practice, or, but anyway, let's pray for Brother Hashim, that he has a recovery, and that through this process, there is development, there is growth, there is love, and then some. So let's give it a few seconds, and I want us to say our prayer for Brother Hashim. Okay, so yeah, and go to Tyree Hakim, Tyre Hakim, Hakim. You can go to his Instagram, or you can go to Golden Child's Instagram, which is GOALDYN, I think. No, GOALDIN, and then the child has the Y, CHYLD, I believe. But you could go to Tyree's and then say, see the update and see what's going on. I haven't been on there this morning, so I don't know where we are. I know yesterday he did wake up and he was moving. But I didn't tune in until after that because they had a little scare, and that after the surgery, he was up, he was laughing, and then he went to sleep and they couldn't wake him up. So he was on stroke alert. And then I believe they woke him up according to Tyree's Instagram. And then he was actually moving. I saw the video of him moving a little bit. But okay. So announcements over here. Today we got the City of Chicago City Civics Organization presentation and panel discussion. That's going to be it's all on the Facebook and Instagram, and so y'all can go check that out there. Monday we got the FSIC podcast, which you'll be able to chime in. Again, go to my social media, make sure you are following me there. You learn how to tune into that. Then Thursday night we got the Elevated Places with Sister Charlene. Tune into that. That flyer's on the website, on the information on the social media. And then Saturday we have the Silver Room. We're going to be doing a networking event. We're going to be doing a book talk and a book signing. Okay. And that may or may not be live stream. I got to figure that out. I got to go talk to Brother Eric to see what the setup is for that. Okay. So let's talk about crisis management, because in our community, crisis management looks differently than it does in the broader community. In the broader community, they usually have time. They bring in consultants like myself. I go in to, it may be emergency, it may be quick, it may be late at night, it may be early morning, go in, do the Olivia Pope thing in a righteous and legal way. Or it may be just a formal, consulting contract where they go, hey, we're working through, we got this crisis. And those crises could be any number of different things. But in our community, oftentimes, just like us personally, our businesses are oftentimes in a chronic state of crisis. And this is oftentimes what challenges us and prevents our businesses from doing as well as they could be, because the energy that we may be spending on sales or growth may be spent on crises or mini crises or micro crises that we just look at as surviving as part of business. So I want to talk about that today to give us some hints and some signs. And these are things that I use as a consultant when I talk to you, because you may not come to me about and say, hey, I'm in a crisis. You may just come to me and say, hey, I need some help with my business. Sales are low, or I'm having this problem. I'm listening for these things that are going to tell me whether or not you're in a crisis and help me to hone in as to where you are in that particular crisis so that we can design a strategy to help you get out of it. Okay. So if you have the book, go to Crisis Management. It's going to start on page 132. And I'm going to actually start where it says recognizing when you are in a crisis. Contrary to popular belief, crises are not always explosive events. You see that a lot when you're dealing with the stock market. If you're like me, you listen to Kitco News all the time. I live on CNBC listening to the markets and who's doing what deals with what and how they're responding to crisis. This is kind of how I practice, keep myself sharp as well, because I'm listening for crisis language that oftentimes, because I've worked in this field, I can sometimes hear it when the layperson maybe cannot. Okay, so they're not always explosive events. They can be subtle, creeping in quietly until they are nearly irreversible. And this is oftentimes what happens to us. These crises creep in, they become part of our everyday business. I call it like they create a cancer, and then we have to figure out either how to cut the cancer out or just shut the whole thing down altogether. And that's what we want to avoid. Okay. We want to do what we can to maintain the ongoing concern of our businesses. One of the most important skills in crisis management is being able to recognize when a business is shifting from strategic growth into reactive survival mode. I'm going to read that again, okay? One of the most important skills in crisis management, and here I probably should have said not so much in crisis management, but as an entrepreneur, as a business person. And I'm going to read it like that. One of the most important skills as a business person is being able to recognize when a business is shifting from strategic growth into reactive survival mode. Okay, these warning signs often appear gradually, but if left unchecked, they can accelerate a downward spiral. And I'm going to go over 4 critical indicators. This is good for you to pay attention to for your business, for your, if you're a solo entrepreneur and you do independent contracting, pay attention to this. Pay attention to it for your personal brand. Pay attention to it for your organization, your church, your synagogue, your mosque, your sorority, your fraternity, your charitable organization. Okay? Because a lot of times, what we do oftentimes as Black entrepreneurs, and I see this a lot, we do business based on money. So it's all about if we got the money, where the money's coming from, what we do when we get the money. That's our overall primary focus. And so outside of money, we don't do a lot of planning. We don't do a lot of programming. And then oftentimes we lock in on one particular source of money. So whether it's grants, whether it's selling t-shirts, whatever that one source is that has been successful for us, we don't realize that we're putting ourselves in a reactive survival mode for our business when we're not adequately planning for strategic growth. Okay. All right. So let's talk about these 4 indicators. The first one is decision-making driven by fear rather than strategy. Okay. If you're not strategically planning for your business to grow and you're sitting there saying, I don't got the budget for this, or where's the money going to come from? Or let me stress out and see what all I can go and apply for. If you're in that mode, you're not positioning yourself or your business for strategic growth. Okay. In a healthy business, decisions are made through a process. In a healthy business, decisions are made through a process. If you, each and every one of us, and I talk about in the book how as a little girl, I started seeing myself as a business entity. I was playing, but this is real. This is what I did. You have to think about, in a healthy business, decisions are made through a process. What is that process through which you make your decisions? Or are you emotionally reacting to everything? Some of us in business, this is how we make decisions. We emotionally react to something that happens. We only make decisions when we have money. We see somebody else doing something. We get jealous. We get competitive because we don't have any ideas of our own. And we go, I want to do that. I can do that. And we start freaking out because we saw somebody else do something. And this is, I see entrepreneurs do this all the time. They'll see somebody else do something and literally spend all night planning on how they could do it themselves. It becomes a mission. Their next whole thing that they're doing is all about, what did that last person do? That person that triggered them, that person that made them jealous. Do you realize that a lot of times an idea will come to you because God wants you to partner or collaborate with somebody else to take the idea or the concept to the next level? Not for you to scramble around like a rugged individual and figure out how you could do it yourself. because 9 times out of 10, because it was not your original idea, what you're going to do is going to be mediocre at best. That's a whole nother subject. All right. So in a healthy business, decisions are made through a process. 1, gathering data. How often are you gathering data about your business? What do your customers want? What is the feedback from them? How many customers do you have? What is your target market? Approximately how many people are in that target market? How are you going to reach them? What are the habits of those people in that target market? I'm just using those as an example. Evaluating your options. See, a lot of us forget about thinking about options. And if you bring me on as a coach or a consultant, I'm going to take you through options. What are the different options? And then based on those options we identify, we're going to start to gather data and run some strategic scenarios to see which one is the best one for your business. Not you just copying off of what you see somebody else doing. Okay. We got to get out of that as a people. You got to get out of this envy, this jealousy, this competitiveness, this lack of creativity, and looking and saying, oh, they doing this, I'm going to do this too. You can look for other people for inspiration, but we got to get out of this concept of going straight into competitiveness. This is part of the residue of having a colonialized mind and being a slave, because the slaves all had to compete with one another for resources. They had to compete with one another for the master's attention, for who was going to get certain privileges. They intentionally put us in competition with one another. But like Tom Burrell says, the brainwashed becomes the brainwasher. So now what's happening? We do it ourselves. We automatically compete. I will tell you, I can't tell you how many times my clients are stagnating their business because maybe they saw somebody doing something, maybe they met with somebody and they sitting up there trying to do what they seen that other person do in their business and did not go through these 4 steps to make sure that that was something that was good for their model, their brand. And then I think sometimes we get a little spooky and we think, well, because that idea came to me, maybe it means I'm supposed to do it. No, maybe it means you're supposed to be a collaborator. Maybe it means you're supposed to be a partner. Maybe it just means you're supposed to be an observer. Maybe it just means that you're supposed to be inspired. It may not necessarily mean that you need to go spend your resources and your time copying off of that person, because sometimes it don't hit. I'm going to say something else. You got to understand your customers and your market and who you are. So if I have a particular business I'm working on, like I know my followers and my people that buy my books and support my project, I know them. I know who they are. I know what time they're going to get up in the morning. I know what time I can get on a podcast that they're going to pay attention. I know that if I start having too many guests and too many people on that they don't like that either. I realize that people come to me for a resource as a source of information, a source of inspiration, a source of transformation. And so I understand, and then I understand who they are. Okay. So I'm very careful that if I see somebody else doing something, I know that that may not necessarily translate because I've gathered enough data about my people to know who they are. Somebody asked me, they said, you get up in the morning, why don't you just jump on your podcast? And it'll be really, somebody said to me, it'd be really cute if you kind of did, if it was a real breakfast podcast where you would just kind of laying on the couch or laying across the bed. First of all, that's inappropriate, I think. Second of all, 60% plus of the people who subscribe to my podcasts and stuff like that are men. And men are very visual. Not only are men very visual, they're very loyal. So if 60% of your subscribers are men and you come on the screen looking like a schlumpadinka, you're going to lose many of them, because a lot of times men can't get past how you look and they can't hear what you say because they're busy looking at how you look. It's just how they're wired. See, we can, as women, we can go online and listen to somebody that maybe doesn't look a certain way. So you'll see with men, they tend to follow something that is visually aesthetic to them. Okay. And then they pay attention, and it gets their attention. And if it's something that, if they're a little bit more advanced and they're aware of that, they may just put the audio on if it's something they don't visually like to look at. But you got to know your audience, right? Even, for example, we have the Coalition of House Museums, and all of us are so different because we all represent history that is being preserved, that is important to our community. But as you know, as Black people, we're not a monolith. So you have some that are spiritual or religious based, that represent religious figures, like the Elijah Muhammad House, a nation builder. So the people who respond to that stimuli are going to be different, maybe from people who respond to the Chaka Khan house or the Bootsy Collins house or the Rick James legacy. It's going to be different, right? It's going to have a different audience. You're going to have a different group of people. And so you have to figure out how to tailor these things to connect with your followers. Now, you may say, I want to add on a new follower. So here's the other piece of it. If you know, let's say you're doing the Rick James legacy, and you know that you right now have a lot of middle-aged white people who primarily support your events or who really are down with what it is that you're doing. And you say, but you know what? There was so many Black people that love him some Rick James. I'm just using this as an example. And I got to tap into that market. Well, now you got to figure out how to gather data and strategically plan so that you can offer services and products that tap into that market. Because I'm telling you something that we do as Black people. We think that all white people got money. We really feel good when we got a lot of white people that support us. We think all white people got money. We think all white people are some kind of authority figure. They come tell us something, or we see them. We think they're the police. We think they're official. We think something. So we attach a lot of perceived value to their presence in our business. And I'm not saying that they don't have a presence, but it's a certain type of presence. And I'll tell you a hint, and I learned this in healthcare. Well, I'll give you an example. In the healthcare field, Black men are probably the most neglected. Usually, as Black women are neglected too, sisters. I don't need y'all to freak out on me. But usually we got a couple of doctors. We may have our OBGYN and we may have our regular doctor. But Black men oftentimes don't go to the doctor at all. And they don't even have a doctor. So if in healthcare you can begin to cater to middle-aged men and or specifically Black men, you will have patients or customers for life, and they will be long-term and ongoing, because once the buying pattern and the buying behavior of Black men is that once they hook in, they stick with you. They with you. They got you. Even if they get busy, they got you. Because they don't tend to shop around. As Black women, we tend to be shoppers. So we shop. We'll go to this event today and another event tomorrow, and we see something over here that's cute. It's kind of how we do things. Anyway, I digress. Let's go back to crisis management. In a healthy business, decisions are made through a process, gathering data, evaluating options, weighing risks, and choosing the best path forward. That's what we've been talking about. In survival mode, the decision-making process collapses into a single motivator, and it's fear. Now, a lot of us don't identify with that because we are so accustomed to fear that we don't think that we're afraid. We don't realize that a lot of our behaviors are based on fear. The advice we give other people is because we're afraid. We're trying to avoid something. So every other word out of our mouth or every other thought out of our brain is, oh God, I got to be careful over here. I got to be careful over there. I remember the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan saying to me that the word be careful, I'm paraphrasing, has certain emotional impact. And the phrase be mindful has another emotional impact. You got to know when to use the other. Everything ain't be careful. Okay. So I lean towards being mindful because in every situation, the more mindful I am, I can identify what I need to be careful about. But I also can identify where God is trying to take me through something to the best path for success. So be mindful is my go-to phrase. And then being mindful will tell me what I need to be careful of and what I need to hone in on. So it's like a compass. Being mindful is more like a compass. Where to go, where to stay from, what direction to move in. And I saw that supported by my courses as an emotional intelligence coach that I took. Being mindful versus being careful. Being careful is fear-based. Because when you are constantly, if you got to be careful of everything, you end up with all of these things you're trying to keep up with, and next thing you know, you're paralyzed. You can't move forward. But if you're mindful, you can see where to move strategically. Okay, I see this person over here is a snake. I see him. I get it. I understand what concentric circle they need to be in. They definitely not in my inner circle. That's right, Brother Lamont. Being careful and being mindful. Two different things. Now, when I'm being mindful, now Allah got my attention with that thing. Am I going to over focus on the fear? There's probably another blessing in this that if I'm mindful, I can see it. So I'm walking down the road and that's my compass. The emotions is my compass. Got to be careful over here because I might fall off a cliff. That's a good thing to be careful about, right? You don't want to fall off the cliff by going down this road. So I'm mindful. I'm navigating. This is the way I got to go because this is where my treasure is. This is where my best next step is. But if I start out and the idea of falling off the cliff is overpowering me, now I'm be careful, be careful, be careful. And I won't even go. I won't even see the other option to go the other direction and see where Allah is pointing me. I won't be able to use my emotions as my compass because I'm rooted in fear. Okay, y'all get that? Thank you for that feedback, Brother Lamont. Let me know if y'all getting that. Number 2. So the first thing is our decision-making driven by fear rather than strategy. When we see ourselves being driven by fear, we are in a crisis mode. We're either creating a crisis or we're already in a crisis. A lot of us walk around because we still got the thinking that we had when we were slaves. So we're constantly creating crises over and over and over again. everywhere we go, we're worried, we're concerned, we're careful. We got to be mindful. Okay. Careful is like this. Mindful is like this. Mindful allows us to see all the options. Okay. Mindful allows us to know exactly what we should be careful of. All right. Okay. I think y'all got that. Number 2, declining customer service due to strained resources or low morale. That's the second sign that your business is in a crisis or you are creating a crisis. You can always include and make this personal. When resources are tight, customer service often becomes the first casualty. Think about yourself. You get a little tight on money, you start snapping on people. Start feeling like, I ain't got time for this or that. Same thing happens in our business. We trying to get this money. We ain't got time to be calling her back for her to be returning stuff, coming in here because something is wrong. Our customer service goes down the drain whenever the economy gets tight. Okay. Customer service is usually the first casualty. So whether the economy is tight in your life, whether the economy is tight in your industry or tight in your business, in your relationship, when the economics begin to become strained, the customer service, the interpersonal relationship, the way we serve each other, the way we interact with each other is oftentimes the first casualty. Sometimes we get real hardcore. Sometimes we get real emotional. We get real cutthroat. I don't give a damn. We start making mistakes because we think it don't matter. If you let the economics of a situation overpower you, your relationship, your customer service, how you're moving is oftentimes going to be the first casualty. So staff may be overworked, they might be undertrained, or simply distracted by uncertainty about the company's future. The business starts treating customers as transactions rather than relationships. Okay? Remember, same thing happens in relationships. We start making the interaction between us and that other person transactional as opposed to relationship driven. All right. Here's number 3. I'm going to keep going so I can get through these. I'm talking too much. Number 3, stagnation in product development or innovation. We kind of covered this a little bit. When you start seeing that you ain't coming up with nothing new, if they cut off your money that is attached to this grant or this revenue stream, you can't think of another way to make money. Or if you do think of another idea, you can't figure out how to monetize it. So you got the idea, but now you wasting all this time trying to figure out who you could get the money from, when in fact, the idea may be a monetizable idea in and of itself. And because we don't value our own time, when we look at how much our time is worth versus all of what we have to go through to get that particular money, it may be easier for us to come up with something a little bit more independent. Let me tell you something else. In today's world of data gathering, be careful about just applying for everything. It's a reason why all these jobs that are on the internet are fake jobs. I think they said over 50% of the jobs that you see advertised, whether it's on Indeed or LinkedIn or any of these places, that they're fake. And you will apply and never ever hear anything back. They do that with grants. They put stuff out there. It's really a tactic to gather your data or your information. So be selective about, what you're applying for and how you're putting your information out there, because your information may be more valuable to somebody else than it is to you. All right. And not only, and here's the other piece of it. A lot of people say, well, they got all the information anyway. You're right. But they may not have all your information in that collective manner so that somebody somewhere can go and usurp your corporate identity, your organizational identity. Just change the name off of it and it'll be something else. I can't tell you how many times I've seen my ideas and things like that I do on the internet or somebody else having them. When I first started out in the entertainment industry, I used to run my mouth a lot. And I would get so inspired with all these ideas. And I'd go into these executive offices and I would share my ideas. And next thing you know, I turn on BET and I see my idea. Or I turn on VH1 or somewhere else and I see where somebody took my idea and just literally just transformed it. I had it happen to me in healthcare. I presented a program to a hospital that was a Medicare affiliate. They were on the board of the planning and things like that was being done for Medicare. I forget what they call it. And I remember sitting with my business partner, coming up with this program and this way in which it was a process. And then next thing I know, when they came out with their new rules, our stuff was in there word for word. So that's a lot of reasons why people want you to audition. That's why people want you to apply for grants. That's why people want you to apply for the job, because they're going to take a look at what they see is attractive in you. And sometimes they just lift it. No, they just cut and paste. But it's very, very common. It happens every day. And now it's rampant. So be very mindful of that kind of thing. It's not your individual information. They could get your name, your social security number, your address. There's a number of places they can get that from. But that collective piece where you have this idea, you submit for a grant, for a job, as a proposal. People, they do it with city stuff and municipality stuff where you go and pitch your idea or your concept. The next thing you know, you see them do it. I can't tell you how many pitches I've been in different municipalities, and I've shared things about how we built the micro hospital, which hadn't been done. We ended up winning an award in 2018 for one of the best designed healthcare facilities. And now I see it all the time, even down to the thermal panels and stuff like that we put. I've even been on proposals where I see them submit what they want, and it's almost identical to my building that I had designed. So be mindful of that, okay? Don't be so thirsty to always be pitching and proposing and applying. Try to be original and come up with your own ideas and your own concepts and see what happens. All right. So stagnation in product development or innovation. Innovation requires mental bandwidth and financial investment. In survival mode, both are consumed by keeping the lights on. The focus shifts from what's next to what will get us through this week. All right. Number 4, accepting unfavorable deals just to survive. I think we're all too familiar with that. Desperation can make business owners agree to terms they know are harmful simply to secure immediate cash flow. These deals often create debt traps, operational bottlenecks, or loss of ownership. All of these are tactics, these crisis tactics. The reason why I wanted to share these today is because the enemy will use these tactics to put you in a crisis mode. You may know you're in a crisis mode, and you may not know that you're in a crisis mode. But if they can succeed in putting your business in a crisis mode or putting you in a crisis mode, they can take away certain of your rights. They can take away certain aspects of your business. Okay, really quickly, we got a few minutes. When we start talking about decision making driven by fear, if you have an enemy, for example, or a person who's just trying to take you off your post, and they start making you afraid, making you feel like you got to be worried about all of this other stuff, learn to pause for analysis. Analyze your options, create a decision matrix, because somebody in your organization or outside of your organization may inject a scenario or a situation, or there just might be chatter that creates fear. Well, you know they're going to fire us. You know the CEO is leaving. You know this person's dying. You know they said that if you do such and such, you don't get your check. So injecting fear in your organization, putting you in a crisis, now allows them the room to move in with whatever the next move is that they want to make on you. Okay. If they impact you to the point where your customer service or your interrelationship skills start to decline. Okay. Learn to cross-train your employees. You want to work on morale boosting incentives. That's going to be really important. You want to work on improving the morale of the people in your organization, your business, or your family, whatever we're talking about here for you. Work on the morale. Start to support people. Start to encourage people. You may even want to open things up and say, hey, everybody, come in with your ideas. Maybe some of the rules that you had that you started to implement because you started to get worried and scared and you started becoming over obsessed with control. See, that happens a lot in organizations where we become obsessed with controlling everything and everybody because we're really trying to avert a crisis. So we become control freaks. So one of the biggest things I tell a company to do, I say, you know what? Release the control. Just relax it. Open the floodgates. And then see what comes in. And then you can always sift and close the gates back later. So sometimes you got to throw the enemy off, because when the enemy sees that you are a control freak and that you're controlling too much, the enemy knows the human psychology. Psychops is real. And if there is an obsessive amount of control, they already know that you are making enemies within your organization. You're creating hypocrites. You're going to create phony employees because your control is too much. Your hand is too heavy. So one of the strategies, I just had a company to do this. I said, let it go. Let go of the control. You know what? Do it the way you want to do. Come on, and you let it go. And we're only talking about temporarily. Because when you let go of the control, that enemy's not going to know what to do because they've been weaponizing your obsession with control against you. So you open everything up. You take new ideas. You may even say, hey, all the people that we fired, let's see what happens. If they didn't get fired for something egregious, tell them they have an opportunity to come back and pitch to work here again. You'd be surprised. Then you put things in place and you can always close the gates back up. Once you get rid of that threat, once you release that within yourself, and once you then start to sift through, because sometimes our obsession with fear and control damages people. And even though they are there and they've become very good actors, they're no longer productive or good for our organization. And so because they're such good actors and they appear to be so loyal, we can't just get rid of them. And then the other side of it, our obsession with control is keeping other contractors and vendors or whatever at bay. We open that up. Now we can sift through and pull in some of those good suppliers and vendors and subcontractors that maybe have been at bay because we were so controlling. And then some of those people who really wanted to leave anyway, they'll go ahead and go. And then once that natural thing takes effect and we get kind of that new crop of people, we can shut it down again. Go, hey, look, here's our parameter. Because every organization has to have its rules and its things that that govern the behaviors within the organization. So you get that back in place and you can move forward. So this is just a corporate technique. You see, they do this all the time in corporate America. Okay, stagnation and innovation. You want to allocate a small budget if you can for product development, even during downturns. Start looking for collaborations and partnerships. Okay. When you see new ideas come up, don't be so quick to go, I got this, I can do this, blah, blah, blah. Partner with somebody. You can always benefit from somebody who's done it before, because you're going to run into pitfalls and problems that you could not have foreseen because you don't have the experience. There are some problems that you only know of because of your experience. And so that partnership and that collaboration is going to help you. It's like if you're in construction, you may walk through a building and everything look nice. But a person who has experience can walk through and say, this is a problem over here. This is a challenge. I see how they did this and that. This is what you got going on here. This is why you're paying more money there, because of experience. So collaborations and partnerships are critical. All right. And in terms of accepting unfavorable deals, work on negotiating more flexible terms. Try to find a way in which you can diversify. If it's a financial thing, see if you can get some other options. See if you can figure out something else. See if you can negotiate the terms so that you're not married to the bad deal. Maybe you got to use the bad deal to bridge you over until you get to another part, till you get somewhere else, until you get more customers, until you get through the winter. Negotiate it so that you can get out of it. Okay. All right. Let me know in the chat if this helped us out today. I think our takeaway is we want to consider being careful versus being mindful. Being mindful is how we should start, because being mindful is going to help us to identify exactly what we need to be careful of. And then it's going to help us also identify the opportunities. Okay, family. All right. I will see you all today. If you all are going to the City of Chicago Civics event, the information is on my social media pages. I'll see you all Monday. If you're going to be on the FSIC, that's one y'all should be on. The FSIC, we do a lot of work. Our conversation on Monday is going to be about antitrust and anti-competitive behaviors, which y'all know I cover in the book, but specifically in the healthcare industry. And I'm going to talk about, as we did, I think we talked about it 2 weeks ago, some of the things that we need to be open to doing to mitigate some of the risks associated with these behaviors that are deployed against us, that we just talk about and we just push through, but we don't do anything about it. And so we're talking about pushing back and re-strategizing. Okay. Or Thursday, Elevated Places podcast with Sister Charlene Muhammad. Again, information on social media. Saturday. Y'all go and RSVP. I want to see y'all at the Silver Room. We're going to network. We're going to do a talk. We're going to have conversations. I'll sign your book. If you already have your book, you can bring your book. Okay. If you got your book, bring your book and I'll sign it. If not, there'll be books available there for you to buy. But I like to tell people, go on out there on Amazon and get your book and get it on Prime, so you get it before you get there on Saturday. Why do I say that? Because that way you can participate in some really fruitful conversation. If you just can't do that, that's fine. You can get it there. But if you really want to have a value add and be a part of a fruitful discussion and really be able to ask some questions, it It'd be good if you had it ahead of time. Okay, family. Love you all very much. Prayers up for Brother Hashim, that he continues, that Allah heals him from his head to his toe. Inshallah, we'll be able to have him to come on and do a true sales masterclass again. I put some clips out there from that masterclass. I'll continue to do that. Did I miss anything, y'all? Okay, if I did, I'm sure y'all will let me know. All right, family. Assalamu alaikum. Remember, it's not vibrational. It's not personal. It's vibrational. Look at me messing up my own quote. It's not personal. It's vibrational. Okay, happy Saturday. Do something for somebody today. Love on somebody today. Go to social media. Put those dates that I mentioned on your calendar. And I will see you all very, very soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, family.